Hello and welcome to PFF Wire. I'm Doug Kyed, joined as always by Brad Spielberger. Brad, it's Friday afternoon. How are you doing?
Hey, you had Chigo Okonkwo over 9.5 receiving yards. I had Derrick Henry over 22.5 rushing total carries. Both were easy cashes, plus the Packers might be dead. What a Thursday for a Bears fan like myself.
Yeah, just getting into that game real quick. I think that some people might have thought that the Packers were back after their win over the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not sure if last night proved that they weren't, but because I think that there was actually some positives to take away from that performance, Packers wise. I know Aaron Rodgers didn't play that well, but some of his wide receivers continue to stand out a little bit. But at what are they now? 3-7 now on the season.
Four
It's
and seven, yeah.
4-7. It's pretty safe to write them off a little bit at this point.
Yeah, I think the Vikings can clinch the NFC North with a win this weekend against the Dallas Cowboys. And obviously, we saw Green Bay play well against that team, but the difference is the Titans are now top 5 in EPA per rush allowed. They are a phenomenal run defense, and we're seeing guys like Roger McCreary, their second-round rookie. Christian Fulton was back healthy in this game, had a couple nice reps as well. They can do it all on defense. Shout out to Mike Vrabel and Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator. That defense is one of the best units in the NFL, despite all the injuries. They're still, just like last year, they have the 4th most money in player contracts on injured reserve this season, and they're still just overcoming it as they always seem to.
Let's get into our first segment here, fresh off the wire. And the biggest news of the morning, unfortunately, was related to the Titans. And that's that offensive coordinator Todd Downing arrested for speeding and a DUI. I think just simply relating this to football, some sort of suspension could be coming down the line for Todd Downing. I'm not sure if that would be this season or next season. But yeah, the Titans are on a roll right now. Lots of credit goes out to Mike Vrabel and, for Todd Downing's performance last night as an offensive coordinator. But really unfortunate news this morning for Todd Downing, and really disappointing news as well that, clearly I would assume that, I guess that they're looking into it right now. The NFL is looking into whether there was, drinking on the plane, drinking after the game at the facility, when that actually occurred. But yeah, if you're an NFL coach, coordinator, whatever it is, just take an Uber.
I never understand it. I don't have the money they did. If I did, I don't think I would ever drive again. And I love driving, so I'm not trying to make light of it, but it just doesn't make any of all the things you cannot do. That seems to be the top of the list. So yeah, it does kind of put a damper on a huge win for them. They get the miniature bye. You can probably kick back and relax and have some fun this weekend. And all that probably goes out the window now.
Absolutely. For the Titans, on-field performance-wise, Treylon Burks, breakout performance, highest graded game of his rookie career. He's obviously missed some time with an injury, and his career didn't get off to the greatest start, even in OTAs when there were some conditioning issues and things like that. But I think that last night's game started to show what he can do on an NFL field and why it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that he could be 80 or 90% of AJ Brown in his career, because neither one of those guys are the fastest wide receivers. I think AJ Brown ran like a 4.5. Treylon Burks was like a 4.55, something like that. But they're so big. Like Treylon Burks is 6'3", 225, 230 pounds, whatever it is, that he can carry that speed with all of his pads on much better than a smaller wide receiver. So he can still beat cornerbacks on go routes. He can still haul in deep catches. And then once he's got the ball in his hand, he's really tough to bring down. And that's not only on after the catch situations where you get the ball to him in open space. It happened last night on a deep ball where like the cornerback still can't bring him down just because he's so big.
Yeah, it is a cliche, but it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Faster in pads or can carry their pad weight, all that stuff. It's real. And yeah, the first catch of his in the entire game was a 3rd and 7 that could have changed the entire course of this game. It was an over the shoulder, deep bomb for probably 30, 40 yards to get out of the gate. His 111 receiving yards is the 3rd most of any rookie in a game this year. Chris Olave 169 and Garrett Wilson at 115 against the Patriots. We'll get to that game in a little bit. But yeah, he was great over the field. 7 catches, won in a lot of different ways. And yeah, AJ Brown's obviously having a phenomenal season, but you saw what they saw in him. He can be a special player because he's a big dude and fast.
He really is. And yeah, 2 contested catches when you're that big, when you're that strong, it's a lot easier to come down with the ball against smaller cornerbacks. And there is not a single cornerback in the NFL who can match the size of Treylon Burks. Like, yeah, some of them might be 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", but these guys aren't 225, 230 pounds. So he can box out pretty much any defender that can keep up with him speed-wise on the field. Packers also have a rookie wide receiver worth watching, Christian Watson. Then there was an old quote. I forgot who said it about Chris Carter. I think it was when he was traded from the Eagles. So it must have been Buddy Ryan or something. Said that, all he does is catch touchdowns. That's pretty much all that Christian Watson is doing right now. He's got 5 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. He had 2 last night. Yeah, there's going to be some drop issues. And even I'm not sure how we credited it, but on a screen, ball came to him a little bit off kilter, but probably could have hauled it in. But then on the next play, he catches a touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers. So there's going to be some bad that comes with it for Christian Watson, but the good far outweighs it. And it might be too late by this point, but, I don't know. The performance of Christian Watson this season, the upside that Romeo Doubs has, maybe all of this convinces Aaron Rodgers to actually come back next season when he can get these guys in year 2.
It is huge. I want to shout out our buddy Ari Mero, who had a great stat poll last night. With his 5 touchdown catches in the last 5 days, he now has the most touchdown receptions of all rookie wide receivers. So He had 0. Now he leads the entire group. We did credit him with a drop on that screen pass, so he also does have 3 drops. But there was a stretch where he had 5 touchdowns on 6 catches, and then had a couple important key catches later on. And I still do think there were a couple miscommunications with Rodgers where he either ran the wrong route or broke it off with the wrong depth or did some things that you could tell Rodgers was kind of like, no, why didn't you do this? I think he's still learning the game of football because he came from North Dakota State, but the talent is undeniable. The hands you have to figure out, but people always forget this. Davante Adams, I think we had him with 20 drops over his first 2 seasons. He was like a drop machine out of the second round as well. Packers fans want to run him out of town. I'm not saying Christian Watson's the next Davante Adams, but it does happen. Guys can work that out of their game a little bit, maybe with some more confidence and some more understanding of what they're supposed to be doing on a down-to-down basis. So it's been cool to see his bounce back, his return with the injuries, with the drops, with all of that. Again, he shows you why he was that early of a pick.
Definitely. We talk about our dynasty teams on this podcast sometimes, and I wasn't feeling ultra confident. I think I wound up taking Christian Watson either late first, early second, mid-second, somewhere in there in my dynasty league, and I'm feeling significantly better about it now after these last 2 weeks for Christian Watson. You mentioned it off the top. Chigo Okonkwo does it again in that game last night, 31-yard catch. Now 3 games in a row where he has a 30-plus yard catch. Unfortunately, those are his only 3 catches of the last 3 weeks. But I don't know. I mean, clearly the Titans should be feeding Chig a little bit more in that offense.
Because the first 2, like you mentioned on our last show, were more yards after the catch. It was good blocking, and he got the ball, and almost all of it was yards after the catch. This was a beautiful over-the-shoulder. Yes, it was a busted coverage, but down the left sideline, a full extension leaping catch. You don't see that often from rookie tight ends. And I will say Austin Hooper has played good football. He had 4 catches. I think he had 2 touchdowns last night. He had the jump pass from Derrick Henry and another one, but he's on a 1-year near minimum deal. So I think this will be a Okonkwo's, kind of role going forward. You can tell they move him around the formation. He does pre-snap motion. Like, they have a lot of faith in him for a rookie kind of raw tight end. And then it's not just the receiving too. He has a 75 run block grade over the last month. He's our 2nd highest graded tight end over the last month. And yes, he's not playing every snap, but he's playing a decent amount of snaps at this point. And he's a really interesting and fun young player. And also, because you mentioned your dynasty team, I have all 3 of these players on one of my dynasty teams. So last night was a ton of fun.
I like that. I think I did add Chig on at least one of my dynasty teams just because it's like, why not? Tight ends can be kind of hit or miss. They kind of come out of nowhere sometimes. Browns-Bills. This game, since we last recorded, was moved to Detroit. I figured that the Bills would travel out early to Detroit. It's about a 4-hour drive, but you have to go through Canada. Otherwise, if you go around in the United States, about a 6-hour drive. But the Bills are still in Buffalo right now, and there seems to be some question about whether they're actually going to be able to get out of the Buffalo area and get to Detroit, because the weather in Buffalo is pretty wild right now, if no one's noticed.
picture that a couple of pictures the Bills post on their social media page, you can't even see the seats in the stadium. Like that's how crazy it is. So hopefully they do get out. I think this is just a massive, massive benefit for the Buffalo Bills, though, which might sound funny considering it's going from a home game to a neutral site game. But since 2018, Allen's rookie season, when playing indoors, he has a 90.5 PFF passing grade, which is third among all quarterbacks, 84.7% adjusted completion percentage, which is second, and 8.3 yards per attempt, which is seventh. So, I mean, he's incredible indoors, and I think outdoors, you were going to have Nick Chubb potentially taking over this football game as the best runner, of course, maybe in the entire NFL. The Bills missing Gregory Rousseau, Tremaine Edmonds, Tre'Davious White. So I think, funny as it sounds, the last piece too, they play in Detroit on Thursday for Thanksgiving, so they now get back-to-back games in a 5-day stretch in the same building. In a weird way, it's kind of worked out in Buffalo's favor, of course, if they can safely arrive in Detroit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that they did say that they will not be staying in Detroit, even though that is a short turnaround for them, that, players want to get back around their families, not a ton to do in Detroit over the next 4 days or so. And, once the weather calms down, it's a short flight. Like you don't really think about that region, all those teams being that close, but like Cleveland, I think, is only a 3-hour drive from Buffalo. Detroit, if you go through Canada, is only a 4-hour drive. So, as the crow flies on a flight, that's a pretty short flight there from Detroit to Buffalo, as long as the weather cooperates, which right now it's not. So hopefully the Bills are actually able to get to Detroit. I'm not sure what the other option there at that point would be if they can't get to Detroit. I don't think they're going to be adding an extra week onto the season. You can't really delay this game because, as we mentioned, they're playing in Detroit on Thursday. So I don't know if that would be a forfeiture situation. I have no idea what they would necessarily do if they can't get there, but hopefully they can, and hopefully that's not an issue. Next piece of news, we'll get into this maybe a little bit more, but Chiefs are dealing with some wide receiver injury issues right now. And, when they traded for Kadarius Toney, it looked like, oh man, they are, 6 deep at wide receiver with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Mecole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney. Then you throw in Sky Moore, the rookie. Even Justin Watson has been doing some things for the Chiefs this season. But now Mecole Hardman on injured reserve with an abdomen issue. He also is dealing with an illness this week. And then Juju Smith-Schuster out this week with a concussion. So Kadarius Toney, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, also Travis Kelce, of course. Those are guys that you're probably going to want to start not only in fantasy, but also in DFS leagues. I know that I already put together a showdown lineup for that Sunday night game where I had MVS actually as my captain because Kadarius Toney would have been my choice. He's a little bit more expensive than MVS, so I'm figuring those guys are both going to get a ton of targets in this game for Patrick Mahomes.
Question about it. I think particularly Kadarius Toney, the Chiefs right now are 5th in yards after the catch per reception. The Chargers are 5th in rate of missed tackles. They play soft coverage. That's what they do. They sit back and they let you catch balls underneath. And he is a forced missed tackle machine. That's his game. He's going to beat you underneath. Patrick Mahomes getting the ball quickly in space and he'll go to work. I think it's a phenomenal matchup and maybe a good DFS play like you mentioned.
Definitely. And yeah, I'm excited to see what Kadarius Toney can continue to do in that offense because he looked good last week, and who knows? Like if he shines in this game on Sunday night against the Chargers, like he could wind up being like a nearly every snap guy for the Chiefs. There's ways to move around different pieces on that offense. Mecole Hardman, as we mentioned, on IR, so he's missing at least the next 4 games. So Toney could wind up being an every down starter in that offense, not only for the next 4 games, but I could certainly see them reducing Mecole Hardman snaps, potentially Juju Smith-Schuster, or even Marquez Valdes-Scantling to get him in the offense even more. Couple of additions to rosters late this season. Ndamudong Suh to the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think it's known whether or not he's actually going to play against the Colts at 1 o'clock on Sunday. That'd be a very fast turnaround. But, I mean, I've been waiting for Ndamudong Suh to sign all season, and it makes a ton of sense for him to be going to the Eagles. Obviously, they signed Linval Joseph earlier in the week. So their run defense has been weak this season. I think they're, what are they, last in EPA per rush against. And getting Linval Joseph and Ndamudong Suh, I know they're getting up there in age, but those guys can definitely still make an impact in the middle of the Eagles defense.
No doubt about it. And I think it could be one of the stories of the offseason if Philadelphia, let's say, does make a miracle run and makes Super Bowl or wins the Super Bowl. We, of course, kind of love to take some narratives and overreact to them. But I think a very legitimate one that teams should look to emulate, besides trading, a future first to New Orleans Saints, can't always pull that off, but is their bullpen approach is the analogy I've used to defensive line, where teams are now paying guys nearly $30 million per year to play edge rusher. Their highest paid edge rusher is Hassan Reddick at $15 million per year. They have Josh Sweat beneath that. They have Brandon Graham and all these depth pieces. Same with the interior. You have Fletcher Cox, still not a big deal, but you just add quality, not quantity over quality per se, but you throw a lot of bodies at it. You rotate that position. You keep legs fresh. And the issue was Fletcher Cox played 70 snaps against Washington with Jordan Davis on injured reserve. So I love the idea. Look, Ndamudong Suh cannot play a 700 snaps like he did the last 12 seasons of his career. He's actually never missed a game besides a 2-game suspension a very long time ago. That can happen. But if you play him on a more, early down situation, just kind of focusing on the run, same with Linval Joseph, these guys can be highly effective for 25 snaps a game. I think it's something to continue to monitor that teams might want to copy going forward.
Definitely. Yeah, they have taken a very smart approach since the offseason, and they obviously have improved considerably despite their loss last week. Last piece of news, Eno Benjamin to the Houston Texans. I don't believe this had happened when we recorded our show on Wednesday. Not exactly the most exciting landing spot for Eno Benjamin. I know that some people were thinking maybe the Saints, maybe, the Rams, maybe a team that could actually use another starting caliber running back, but I can't imagine Eno Benjamin getting a ton of carries behind Dameon Pierce, Rex Burkhead in that Texans offense.
The reason why I think it makes a ton of sense, which I think is crazy when I saw this. All right, Dameon Pierce has 165 carries through 9 games in the NFL. He had 180 carries over his last 2 college seasons at Florida. So he almost matched through 9 games his entire 2-year workload at Florida.
Yeah.
We talk about the rookie wall and stuff like that. I think Pierce is fresh, and he's talked about it a little bit in interviews. I think he'll be fine, but I think that's maybe one big reason. Houston sees that. He's never been a true, all-the-time workhorse type back. Why not bring in Eno Benjamin, spell him from time to time? That one stuck out to me.
All right, we're about to go game by game to give fantasy news and notes, injury updates on everyone that you want to know about fantasy-wise. But before that, PFF Wire is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. And it's also a good time to remind you that you can subscribe to PFF Wire on Apple and Spotify. Go to your phones right now. Subscribe to the show, give it a review, a rating, all those things. Everything can help there. First game up, your Chicago Bears against the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons favored by 3 points. The point total in this one is 49.5. So when I look at this, that 3-point line tells me that Vegas doesn't totally know what to do about either one of these teams. But that point total just seems a little bit high for me. So if I was betting anything on this game, I'd probably take the under.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what people are seeing and maybe got it to that high is, look, both these defenses are very bad. There's no question about it. But they're both bottom 10 in EPA per rush allowed, and both offenses are top 10 in EPA per rush. Yeah. And so if you're going to run the ball that much, it's going to burn clock. Even if you are scoring a lot on those drives, you're probably going to use up a lot of clock in the process. So I agree with you there. I mean, I could see it go over, but I would lean towards the under as well. I think interesting thing here is some great end-of-week injury news for the Chicago Bears that just came out. Cole Kmet had a thigh, I think, contusion. He kind of ran into, at the end of the game against Detroit, ran into Jeffrey Okudah and kind of limped off the field. He was trending towards, it looked like maybe not playing, but fully off the injury report, no designation for the game. And then guard Kevin Jenkins, who's dealing with a hip issue, missed that game against Detroit. He's a top 10 graded guard for us this season. He's listed as questionable, but got a full practice in today. Looks like he should also play. So, Komet's our 7th highest graded tight end and top 5 in both pass block and run block the last month. He has 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's an important part of this offense, and Jenkins, like I said, is probably their best offensive lineman. So some great news on a Friday for the Bears.
Definitely. And wide receiver N'Keal Harry out with an illness. And then for the Falcons, AJ Terrell still was limited as of Thursday with that hamstring injury. I don't believe that we've actually got an injury update from the Falcons yet heading into that game. But clearly AJ Terrell, a very important part of that offense. Speaking of DFS, I did have Justin Fields, David Montgomery, and Cole Kmet. Those are all three guys who have like pretty low prices right now as far as DFS goes. I want to keep riding that Justin Fields wave until it I guess hits the shore. I don't know what the metaphor there would be. Cole Kmet also riding high on him, and then for David Montgomery with Khalil Herbert on injured reserve, do figure that we'll probably see a little bit more of David Montgomery moving forward here. So like all 3 of those guys in DFS or in fantasy this week. Next up, aforementioned game, Eagles favored by 6.5 points against the Colts. Point total is 45. That game is in Indianapolis. For the Eagles, Devontae Smith was limited with a knee injury. For the Colts, 2 key cornerbacks, Kenny Moore and Isaiah Rodgers, both were not practicing as of Thursday with illnesses. Running back Deion Jackson, limited with a knee injury, and then tight end Jelani Woods out. This line, the Eagles only favored by 6.5 against the Colts. It feels like it's overreacting a little bit too much to 2 results from last week. The Eagles losing and the Colts actually being able to win with Jeff Saturday as their head coach against the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'd probably lean towards the Eagles in this one.
It's actually opened above a touchdown at 7.5. It's now moved to under at 6.5. I think the Dallas Goedert injury maybe weighing in a bit here. Yeah. And then, we talked about they're dead last in EPA per rush allowed. We don't know if those veteran additions will play. And of course, the Colts are going to run the ball like crazy. But I'm with you. The illnesses around the NFL are interesting. I think a lot of teams are dealing with bugs right now. We talked about Buffalo on Wednesday. The Colts are another. There's a handful of teams that seem to have a lot of guys dealing with that issue. But if let's say Devontae Smith also doesn't play, and then you can put, A.J. Brown up against Stephon Gilmore and do a little bit, in kind of limiting the run game. Miles Sanders did nothing against the Washington Commanders. So, I see what you're seeing, of course, and it could be kind of a blowout, Nick Sirianni coming back and trying to get revenge for his guy, Frank Reich, or whatever the case may be. But it also, I think, could be a low-scoring game, and then, maybe 6.5 points is enough considering how low-scoring it could be.
Certainly. Next game up, Jets against the Patriots. Patriots favored by only 3 points at home against the Jets. Point total in this one is 38.5. The Jets have not beat the Patriots since 2015. Obviously, a whole lot has changed. Probably even more so for the Jets. There's actually still some hangers on that Patriots team since 2015 with Matthew Slater, Devin McCourty, Bill Belichick, all those guys. But injury-wise, Jets wide receiver Corey Davis remains out with that knee injury. For the Patriots, Jonathan Jones was not practicing yesterday with an illness. I believe he was back today. And then wide receiver Devontae Parker has been limited in practice with a knee injury. We'll see if he's able to give it a go now after the bye week. And, I haven't had a lot of faith or confidence in the Patriots so far this season. But I think I'd take the Patriots in this game. I know it's kind of tricky with it being a 3-point line with, only a field goal could push that. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Zach Wilson, I know he's been better since the last time they played the Patriots. So it was like 4 weeks ago. But I think that if anyone can get him back into that, running around with it like a chicken with his head cut off, it'll be Bill Belichick and the Patriots defense. Patriots defense is number 1 in EPA per play against this season. And over the last, I think it's since week 6, or it's either since week 6 or over the last 6 weeks of the season, Patriots are number 1 in EPA per play against, and the Jets are number 2. And then their offenses, the Patriots, I think, are either 31st or 32nd in EPA per play, and the Jets are the other spot. So these are the league's best defenses going up against the league's worst offenses. And I don't know. I think that the Patriots offense will have figured something out over this bye week to not be quite as terrible So yeah, I've got a little bit more faith in the Patriots than I usually do.
I saw you tweet that out. I was hoping you were going to mention it. And just to pile on even more so, the Patriots are third in pressure percentage right now. The Jets are ninth per our charting. And Mac Jones has the second worst grade against pressure, and Zach Wilson has the worst grade against pressure. So you see that total of 38.5, you might think, oh, that's so few points. It should be. It really, really should be. But I do agree with you. I think, yes, they both had a bye, but coming off a bye week with Bill Belichick, I think that we will see positive regression from Mac Jones. I also think the way the Jets beat the Patriots is interesting. Garrett Wilson had 115 receiving yards in that game, second most of any rookie wide receiver in any game this season, 9.7 yards after the catch per reception. You know Bill Belichick sat down over the bye week and said, how can we take this guy out of this game? Corey Davis not going to play, and Elijah Moore is on the back of milk cartons across New York City. So, I think that is kind of a big part of why I like the Patriots as well. Also interesting, too, when you look week 8, I want to say it was Patriots -2.5 or -3 at New York. Now, just like a month later, yes, the Jets beat Buffalo, but you now flip. It's kind of the same at home. Are they really? That is it that big of a swing if you kind of take home field advantage into account? Have they changed by a field goal in value since that time? I don't think so. I think Sheldon Rankins is a decent loss for the Jets as well. They've been really good on the interior for them. So I agree. If anything, I would lean towards the Patriots here.
Yeah, the other one other key is that David Andrews looks like he will be back in this game, returning from a concussion, and his absence. You don't just replace David Andrews with James Ferentz. Cole Strange was playing terribly with David Andrews out of the lineup. I think that a veteran center like David Andrews makes a big impact on a rookie left guard like Cole Strange. So I think the entire offensive line will be playing better now with David Andrews back in the lineup. And it just feels like there's more that's fixable on the Patriots offense than there is on the Jets offense. And maybe you have more faith in Michael Fleur to fix the Jets offense than you do in Matt Patricia and Joe Judge to fix the Patriots offense. But Mac Jones was so good last season. He's been so bad this year that, like you said, I think that you actually start to see some positive regression out of Mac Jones this season. The Patriots ranked 9th in EPA per play last season. And they are, like I said, the 27th, 26th, something like that this season. They've been even worse over the last 6 weeks. So I think that we do start to see a different Patriots offense now that it's after the bye. Next up here, we've got the Saints favored by 3 points against the Rams. Saints are at home. Point total 39. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford back from that concussion. For the Saints, Mark Ingram has been out with a knee injury. Cornerback Marshawn Lattimore has not been practicing with an abdomen injury. Jarvis Landry limited with an ankle injury. And defensive end Cam Jordan out with an eye injury. This is the first game that he is missing due to injury in his entire career. This 3-point line also seems like, I don't know, it seems like Vegas is just kind of like throwing their hands in the air. I don't know what to do about either one of these teams, but I also have no idea what to say about this game. I mean, obviously, Cooper Kupp being out is massive for the Rams. The Rams have already been horrible without him. Now you're replacing him, I guess, in the slot with like Ben Skoranek. I have no idea who plays in that third spot in the Rams offense now. I guess it would be Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson, and Ben Skoranek. I don't know. I have no idea what to say about this game.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was going to say the same thing. I do think the 3 is always the Vegas, we don't know what to do here, so we'll just make the home team -3, and you guys can figure it out for us. I mean, it's crazy to say this given the teams coming in. The Saints are 29th in pressure percentage. That's with Cam Jordan, and the Rams are 32nd. I mean, 2 of the worst pass rush units. The difference, though, the Rams are allowing the second highest rate of pressure in the entire NFL. The Saints, the 8th least. And then you mentioned no Cooper Kupp in this game. I still also don't really know what to do here. Kind of contrarian, and maybe the over 39. Look, it's in a dome. I mentioned how teams cannot really generate a pass rush. I think Cam Jordan's loss is so massive for the Saints defense. Pete Werner, the linebacker, should not play in this game. He's been really, really good as kind of a will linebacker. I think our buddy Nick Underhill put out that he had surgery recently. It's supposed to be a quick scope, and he'll be back soon, but I don't think he's supposed to play in this game. I think that will help the Rams a little bit, maybe get some quick passing, get over the loss of a Cooper Kupp. So, I don't know, maybe kind of a weird contrarian over here, as much as the offenses have really, 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 really struggled and the defenses have some talent. I could see them, both quarterbacks can throw interceptions. Maybe you get a pick six or something like that. In a weird way, I kind of like the over 39, but that's probably forcing a bet if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think I'd be touching this game. There's a bunch of 3-point lines this week. We already mentioned Bears, Falcons favored, Saints, Rams, Patriots, Jets. There's another one here. Giants at home favored by 3 points against the Lions. I did not write down the point total in this game, so we'll look that up while I'm talking here. For the Lions, wide receiver Josh Reynolds limited with a back injury as of Thursday. For the Giants, tight end Daniel Bellinger still out with that eye injury. Wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson was not practicing as of Thursday, but head coach Brian Daboll said that he is optimistic about Wan'Dale Robinson's availability this weekend. And then, not that this really matters fantasy-wise, but Giants wide receiver Kenny Golladay has been limited with a hamstring injury. I believe he did tell reporters that he should be good to go, but he's barely been playing. The only reason he's still on that team is that cutting him would actually subtract salary cap space from the Giants. So they just have to kind of keep him on the roster. One note here, I tweeted this out before the show began. Darius Slayton for the Giants, wide receiver Darius Slayton. He is PFF's 11th highest graded wide receiver since week 5. That's really when his playing time started to increase. He's up there in contested catches, up there in yards per catch, up there in yards per route run. So I don't know what to make of Darius Slayton as a player and his career, everything. Had a great start to his career, disappeared in his, third season. This year, he had to take a pay cut just to stick around. They were barely playing him through the first 4 weeks of the season. And now he's pretty clearly their best wide receiver, at least since week 5. But if he can still continue to play this way, that's a valuable weapon to add to that Giants offense that obviously has already gotten out to a good start this year.
Daniel Jones clearly trusts him and likes throwing him the ball. He put on the afterburners on the touchdown he had last week. Only hits like 60 yards after the catch, and it was an impressive run at that. Beat a couple defenders that took pursuit angles that they probably thought were good angles, and they just could not catch up to him. So, yeah, he's been great. So, another game where it is a little bit tough. The total is 45, and I think I would lean towards the over there. The Lions offense is obviously the Lions defense, is obviously terrible. I think Saquon Barkley could have 200 all-purpose yards in this game. Daniel Jones's legs have been very effective, and I think we saw last week again. The Lions play a ton of man coverage. They turn their backs to quarterbacks, and Justin Fields had 50 rushing yards on the first drive for the Chicago Bears. Obviously added to that total, went over 100 for the game. So I would maybe lean towards the over there, but one prop I love in this game, I think I mentioned it on last week's show. I apologize if I didn't, but it's the same exact concept. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going up against Darnay Holmes, who is our 108th graded slot corner out of 115 total slot corners. That's not great. So Amon-Ra St. Brown last week had Kyler Gordon, the Chicago Bears, who's also struggled in coverage early so far in his career. He hit his receiving yards prop in the first half. He hit his receptions prop early in the third quarter. Right now, his green line doesn't love it. It's 80.5 receiving yards, which is a bit higher than last week. It was at 68.5. But maybe the receptions, maybe if you don't like the receiving yards, I think Jared Goff could complete 10 passes to Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game. So when that comes out, I love that prop.
I like the Giants in this game. I know the Lions looked better last week against the Bears. It was the Bears. I know that the Giants, haven't been quite as good in recent weeks, but I think they can handle the Lions in this game, especially since that is at home. Next week, the next game up here, this line and point total kind of shocked me a little bit. It's Panthers-Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 13 points at home against the Panthers, and the point total is only 41.5 points. For the Panthers, PJ Walker is out. Baker Mayfield will start. Sam Darnold will be the backup. But for the Ravens, Mark Andrews was a full participant in practice, but listed as questionable. And John Harbaugh said that he'll be a game-time decision in this game. He's dealing with knee and shoulder injuries. Do you think that since he was a full participant in practice, chances are pretty high that he'll play in this game? But running back Gus Edwards, dealing with knee and hamstring injuries, he's questionable. Quarterback Lamar Jackson did not practice today due to an illness, but John Harbaugh said that he will start on Sunday against Panthers. He's listed officially as questionable. I don't know. I mean, I like the Ravens this year. I understand the Panthers have been through a lot, not exactly the most talented team, but 13 points is a lot for a Panthers team that's been pretty feisty since Matt Rule was fired and Steve Wilkes took over. We've only seen half a game of Baker Mayfield since Steve Wilkes took over, and he was actually pretty good in that half a game. So I think the Ravens win this one, but I don't think they win by 13 points.
The combination of a 13-point spread and a 41.5
Wild.
total, that's the craziest part, where it's like, how are you supposed to cover that many points if you're not expected to even score 24 points in the game? So that I totally see you there. I'm with you there. I'm not going to bet the Panthers. I think it's hard for me to get there at this point, but I do totally, like I said, no, like the math is not mathing. When you look at the combination of those two numbers. So maybe the argument you make, even with the Baltimore Ravens injuries, is on defense. You basically, all the Panthers have is DJ Moore. You maybe throw Marcus Peters on him or throw Marlon Humphrey on him. Probably intercept Baker Mayfield 1 or 2 times because he'll probably just stare him down and throw him the ball. And then they have a good run defense, top half of the NFL per grading, but better than that in yards per carry allowed, some other metrics, EPA per rush. So maybe that limits Deontay Foreman, who's having a phenomenal, run now as their running back. But I'm with you. If anything, I would lean towards the under, which again just bolsters maybe taking Carolina like you said. But yeah, I would lean towards the under here with Lamar Jackson's illness, with Mark Andrews maybe not playing, not 100%. Even if he does, the Panthers have a decent secondary, and then both defenses come. The Ravens should get back Tyus Bowser, maybe get a little bit of David Ojabo in this game. Coming out of their bye, Carolina coming off a Thursday game, that should favor the defenses getting rested and healthy. So yeah, this is a weird one though for sure.
Yeah, when I saw 13 points and 13-point line and 41.5 point total, I was like, wow, that's an odd combination there. All right, another 3-point line, but this time Commanders favored by 3 points on the road against the Texans. Point total here is 40.5. For the Commanders, J.D. McKissick dealing with a neck injury. He's not been practicing this week. Wide receiver Curtis Samuel limited with a shin injury. Tight end Logan Thomas limited with a rib injury. Defensive end Chase Young still dealing with that knee injury due to offseason surgery. He's not played yet. Ron Rivera said that if he's activated, he'll be a game-time decision, so that doesn't look great for Chase Young. On the Texans side, rookie cornerback Derek Stingley has not been practicing with a hamstring injury, and it is going to be Taylor Heineke continuing to start for the Commanders since Carson Wentz has not been activated off of injured reserve. I don't think the Texans necessarily want to be winning games. I think they're in pretty good position right now with that number 1 overall pick, and certainly I don't think that they're tanking or anything like that, but I'd lean more towards the Commanders on this game.
Yeah, they're going to run the ball 50 times like they just did against Philadelphia. And the Texans, not a bad run defense for this season. Like one of the worst run defenses we've seen in several years. So I think you're going to get a healthy dose of Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson in this game. And they'll be more efficient than they were against Philadelphia, which wasn't great. Had a couple nice runs, but wasn't great. And then, Derek Stingley is a big loss if he can't play. I would guess he doesn't. They do have really good depth at cornerback in Houston. But my big thing is looking at both sides of the trenches on the interior. So Houston has not really much on interior defensive linemen. Malik Collins is a solid player, has not been healthy most of the season, and that's kind of the one weakness for Washington, but I think they will play better against a weak interior. And then on the flip side, Houston, the tackles have been great. Laramie Tunsil has been great. Titus Howard has been really good, in a contract year. Their interior, even with rookie Kenyon Green's been kind of dreadful. Center, they've had turnover there. They've had players, miss times of the season. So obviously you have Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen on the interior for Washington. So I think that kind of controls the game. I like Washington -3 here. That is a bet I made this week.
Yeah, for the Texans, I do my 1 up, 1 down every week, and I feel like it's either Kenyon Green or Scott Quisenberry. It's one of those guys on the Texans interior offensive line who's noted as the down every week. So they definitely have struggled there. Next up, you've got the Browns and the Bills. We talked about this game earlier. Neutral playing field in Detroit. I'm curious to see what the fan base is like in this game, because I don't know. I mean, for Bills fans, they might not be able to get out of Buffalo. For Browns fans, they're actually pretty close to Detroit. So I know it's a neutral playing field. It's pretty close to both of these cities, but it's closer to Cleveland, and they're not dealing with the weather. So you might actually see more Browns fans than Bills fans at this game, but the Bills are favored by 7.5 points. Point total, 49.5. Browns side end David Njoku, limited with an ankle injury, but says he'll play. we talked about earlier. For the Bills, linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, cornerback Tre'Davious White, and defensive end Gregory Rousseau all out due to injuries. Quarterback Josh Allen off the injury report. He is now good to go on that right elbow. But yeah, this is going to be, I think, the Bills certainly attacking the Browns through the air with Josh Allen and those wide receivers, and the Browns doing the exact opposite and leaning extremely heavily on, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and that pretty stacked Browns running back core. This is a game where I like Nick Chubb quite a bit. Fantasy-wise, DFS-wise, I think that he can get a ton of carries against the Bills.
I think he definitely will. It's funny, this moved from the total was at 42.5 when we thought it was going to be in a blizzard in Buffalo, moves a full touchdown now that it's in a dome, and I don't blame him. And I honestly think I still probably lean towards the over here. The spread also moved from 9.5 all the way down to 7.5. I thought part of that was the weather, but it hasn't moved back towards Buffalo now that we've moved. So I think that's interesting. Buffalo becomes a teaser leg now in those long teasers. So you can get it through 7 and through 3, which I think is interesting. But yeah, I would lean towards the over. I mentioned how good Allen is in a dome, but also, no Tremaine Edmonds, no Gregory Rousseau is a massive, massive 2 players to lose. Edmonds having a phenomenal season, also in his 5th-year option contract here this year. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt could go off in this game. I would lean towards the over here, if anything.
Yeah, I like the over in this one as well. I don't love the line. If I had to lean one way or the other, I might take the Browns, but still obviously think the Bills will win that game. Next up, you've got the Raiders against the Broncos. Broncos favored by 2.5. Point total 41.5. For the Raiders, wide receiver Devontae Adams has been limited with an abdomen injury. And for the Broncos, wide receiver KJ Hamler not practicing with a hamstring injury. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy did not practice on Thursday with an ankle injury. This could be a rough game between 2 teams that have really struggled so far this season. Both head coaches, people have speculated whether or not they'll make it through the year. And for the Raiders, it's tough. They're underdogs in this game. Last week looked like a must-win against the Colts and Jeff Saturday. And this game maybe wouldn't be quite as embarrassing to lose to the Broncos since they do have a very good defense. But if KJ Hamler doesn't play, if Jerry Jeudy doesn't play, I don't know. I think the Raiders probably should take this one, even though they're underdogs. But I don't know. This could be an ugly matchup.
Yeah, Russell Wilson took 6 sacks for 39, negative 39 yards last week. I think Max Crosby, I don't have it in front of me. You can bet on sack props. You can find them on DraftKings. I think FanDuel has them as well. I'm guessing his is 0.75 or even a full 1. I still think I like it. Russell Wilson just refuses to get rid of the ball. And with those receivers potentially not playing, that even bolsters the potential that he sits back there and takes way too long. I would lean towards teasing the Raiders. I'm not even sure how they're, I thought it'd be closer to a pick 'em. Frankly, of course, they've been bad, but the underlying metrics, they are a better offense. They've been better in efficiency metrics. They just haven't won any games. Denver's offense is one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL. So I would lean towards the Raiders here. A bit of a revenge game for Josh McDaniels, I suppose, against his former team in the Denver Broncos. But yeah, with all their offensive line and receiver injuries, I think the Raiders finally right the ship here, get a win. I like teasing them a lot, specifically with the San Francisco 49ers, which we'll get to in a little bit. But you can tease those through the key numbers of 3 and 8 for both of them. That's one of my favorite plays of the entire weekend.
All right, next up, you've got the Cowboys favored by 1.5 points on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. Point total in this one is 48.5. The Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott has been limited with a knee injury, but Jerry Jones said that he should be able to return this, or should be able to play this week. For the Vikings, Christian Darrisaw, I believe, was back at practice today with his concussion. Then wide receiver Justin Jefferson has been limited with a toe injury. The Vikings are just such a hard team to figure out this year because, they beat the Bills on Sunday. I think that pushed them into that legitimate category, but they're still a team that ranks so middle of the road in pretty much everything, like EPA per play, EPA per play against, even EPA per pass. It's just you wonder how they're doing as well as they are. And I think that Kevin O'Connell has obviously done a great job as head coach. He's been extremely conservative with Kirk Cousins, but they're still allowing Justin Jefferson to go out there and make plays. A ton of explosive plays this season, tons of contested catches. So they're really leaning on Justin Jefferson pretty hard. It's tough that he's dealing with a toe injury. We're not sure how severe that is, though it did limit him in practice. But I don't know. I mean, this is two teams that saw such different results on Sunday, with the Cowboys losing to the Packers and the Vikings beating the Bills. Maybe this is just me overreacting to that, but I think I would lean a little bit more towards the Vikings in this game, being 1.5-point underdogs to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned coming off those games where Green Bay loses to a bad Packers team and the Vikings beat the team that most people thought was the best team in the NFL, and they still open as home underdogs. Tells you a lot about what Las Vegas thinks. I think the biggest thing here, though, is whether Christian Darrisaw can play or not is a massive, massive difference. I mean, he's allowed 0 sacks in the season. He's actually our highest graded tackle in the entire NFL. One of, I want to say, 3 tackles that is above 80 as both a pass blocker and a run blocker. His backup, Blake Brandel, allowed a sack in 24 snaps in that game. So, pretty much immediately after Darrisaw had not allowed one the entire season, it's huge. But I will say, if he plays, I think I agree with you, because we've talked about this as well. Minnesota and Kirk Cousins specifically struggle with interior pressure. I mean, the interior of the offensive line is not good, and Kirk Cousins struggles with pressure up the middle. They can do their tackles, the highest graded tackle duo in the NFL. And Dallas, as we saw against Green Bay, they had 5 total pressures. They were dropping Micah Parsons a lot. Probably not a good idea to do that. He did have some nice plays in coverage because he's Micah Parsons. But nevertheless, if they're just getting rushed off the edge, if they're not shifting Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence inside, Lawrence is dealing with like 7 different injuries right now too, then I can see how the Vikings can move the football both on the ground, where the Cowboys are 19th in EPA per rush allowed, and through the air, because I think their tackles can hold up in this game. So I agree with you there. It is a bit of a fishy line. I think Vegas is saying a lot with how they like this, how they laid this. I like Dallas a lot for the season, but I'm not sure it's a great matchup for them.
Yeah, and Christian Darrisaw and Justin Jefferson, just to give an update, I was a little bit behind on this. Both off the injury reports, so should be good to go against the Cowboys. So that does make me like the Vikings being a 1.5-point underdog even more in this game, because I don't know. I mean, they're just it's like it feels like there's a bunch of those teams this year where it's like the Giants and the Vikings, where the underlying metrics say they should not be as good as they are. But I think that some of the credit there goes to coaching, to Kevin O'Connell, Brian Daboll, some of these other coaches around the NFL. Next up here, you've got the Bengals, 3.5-point favorites on the road against the Steelers. 41-point line in this game. Minkah Fitzpatrick back from that appendicitis. Obviously, you've got TJ Watt back for the Bengals. Wide receiver Jamar Chase still will not be playing on that hip injury. We'll see if he can come back next week. But I don't know. I feel like I should feel a little bit more confident in the Bengals in this game. Only favored by 3.5 points to a Steelers team that's really struggled. But I know that we both liked the Steelers last week. This point total also just seems low for a Bengals team that over the last 5 or 6 weeks has been right up there in EPA per play. I know that they had that one really poor performance against the Browns, but they were able to bounce back last week. I don't know. I guess I like the Bengals in this game, but I'm just like this line and point total are just throwing me off a little bit.
I get your trepidation. I think you can kind of break this down a little bit and see some things working in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
The ones they lost, Chidobe Awuzie at the Bengals, that outside corner. I mean, Deontay Johnson and George Pickens should have good games. I think without a DJ Reader, I know his window was activated, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think he still won't play for the Bengals.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So, look, they have a good edge rush duo with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, but nothing special. The Steelers' offensive line is not good, but it hasn't been a total liability. And we're starting to see Kenny Pickett use his legs a little bit, had a couple nice kind of scrambles in the last game, and he's willing to throw downfield to Pickens and Deontay Johnson, who I think will win a lot of one-on-one reps on the outside against the corners that Cincinnati has. So,
DJ Reader is good to go this week, actually. DJ Reader is fun. Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge because, Najee Harris finally had his first good game of the entire season, basically this past week against New Orleans, who's historically a good run defense. Reader is one of the best nose tackles in the NFL. He is really, really good. He's a difference-making player. That changes a little bit as a mid-answer. But anyway, I'm avoiding the game altogether. I have no idea what's going to happen. It could be a classic Mike Tomlin win. I wouldn't be surprised the Bengals win by 30 points because the Steelers are not a good football team. But yeah, TJ Watt, against Lyle Collins, who has played better the last month,
Mhm.
and Jonah Williams. It's a massive mismatch. I don't care if he's played better. So I could see it going either way. This is not help. My answer not helping at all, but this is one I would just stay away 100% from.
I feel like this is a game where the Bengals are going to win by 20 points, and we're like, what the hell? What were we thinking? Like considering that the Steelers could win this game. Just a quick update here. Patriots ruled out defensive tackle Christian Barmore against the Jets. Kind of surprising that happened so early because that game is in Foxborough. They could have waited until that was a game time decision for him to be ruled out. And then also punter Jake Bailey. I know that most people don't care about the Patriots punting situation, but Jake Bailey is doubtful with a back injury. Jake Bailey is, I think, like the second or third highest paid punter in the NFL this season. And he's been dreadful. He's been one of the worst punters in the NFL. And that dates back to last year, actually, where he really struggled through some injuries. But if he doesn't play, the Patriots do have, I have no idea how to pronounce his last name, but Michael Pilardi on their practice squad. Yep. That legitimately might be an upgrade over Jake Bailey. That's how bad Jake Bailey has been for New England. All right, we've got 2 games left here. Sunday night, Chiefs favored by 5.5 points over the Chargers. We talked about the wide receiver situation. Juju Smith-Schuster out. Mecole Hardman on IR. Running back Jerick McKinnon has been limited with hamstring and shoulder injuries. Cornerback L'Jarius Sneed limited with a knee injury. Wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling was limited with an illness. And then for the Chargers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have been back in practice but limited. Also, wide receiver DeAndre Carter, who's filled in for them, has been limited with a rib injury. And tight end Gerald Everett limited with a groin injury. Like I mentioned, Chiefs favored by 5.5 points in Los Angeles. Point total here is 52. Chargers feel like one of those classic teams that are not as good as their record indicates. And I think I would take the Chiefs being favored by 5.5 points in this game.
Yeah, it opened at a full touchdown. I think that was too much, and it's now moved because of these wide receivers for the Chargers. That's the best indication as to why it's moved.
Yeah.
I will say you go back and look at their matchup. It was forever ago, and there were a lot of players, Joey Bosa, Rashawn Slater, J.C. Jackson, that are not playing in this game. And without the, 99-yard interception return touchdown that Justin Herbert threw at the end of the game, right. Patrick Mahomes wasn't great in that matchup. Like, they played well and could have won that football game. But I agree with you. As of right now, the Chargers are second in the total player average annual value. Excuse me. Basically the sum of the player contracts on injured reserve. They have the second most. The Chiefs are dead last. They're the healthiest team in the NFL right now, and so I think that is the big split. And that obviously is heavily in Kansas City's favor. But yeah, now that it's 5.5, I probably agree with you. But I did think at 7, maybe that was too many points, and the total of 52. It still might go over with these two teams because both defenses are just not good.
Yeah, and for the Chiefs, I mean, obviously it impacts them not having Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster, but when you've got the depth that they have at that wide receiver position, then you throw in Travis Kelce as well, where like you don't even necessarily need a third wide receiver in that offense, and your top 2 are still Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Kadarius Toney, and then you've got Sky Moore and Justin Watson. I don't know. It impacts them, but not as much as it might with some other teams not having 2 of your top wide receivers out in the game. Monday night, we'll talk about this a little bit later on Monday's show, but the 49ers currently are favored by 8 points. Again, I guess, it's in Mexico City. So against the Cardinals, neutral playing field. Point total is only 43.5. So that's another one where it's a pretty high line. The 49ers favored by 8 with a 43.5 point total. For the Cardinals, Zach Ertz out for the season. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins didn't practice yesterday with a hamstring injury, but that doesn't sound like it's a big deal. But for the Cardinals, Colt McCoy limited with a knee injury. Quarterback Kyler Murray limited with a hamstring injury. And Cliff Kingsbury gave him the dreaded game time decision tag once again this week. Okay, I mean, this is what I was talking about last week. So Kyler Murray was a game time decision last week, and then he didn't play. And now he's a game time decision again this week. He wasn't a game time decision last week. Like, if he still is not guaranteed to play this week, then he wasn't a game time decision. Like, you cannot trust Cliff Kingsbury when he says these things about Kyler Murray or pretty much any other player on the roster, because it's just blatantly false. That game is in Mexico City. Like I said, I think that one of those teams is it the 49ers or the Cardinals that are practicing in Colorado Springs this week. Do you know?
Probably the 49ers if I had to guess.
Yeah, so I think it's you can say what you have on this game, and then I'll get into that.
You pull it up, but I'm fairly confident that's who it is because it's about the altitude, and I think they did it last time as well. They want to adjust to the altitude because Mexico. I think it's a higher stadium than even Mile High in Denver. I think it's like 6,200 feet in the air. So yeah, here's my thing. Even if Kyler Murray is a positive game time decision and does play, if he's dealing with a hamstring that's not 100% healthy against this 49ers pass rush unit, it's going to be a nightmare regardless. And then, Colt McCoy now limited. He did have 0 turnover-worthy plays. I think he was a big boost for them. Kyler Murray has 16 of those in the season. He's top 5 in the NFL. I actually think he's second behind Josh Allen. Has not been the same guy as he was to start last year. And everyone kind of has this negative reflection. He was great the first 10 weeks of the season and then kind of fell off a cliff once they lost DeAndre Hopkins. But nevertheless, I love the Niners in this game. I think it could be a pretty much an ugly game, depending on how things go. It's just not a good matchup. The Cardinals have lost so many guys in the interior, and so I think the Niners will shuffle guys around. They do have their injuries of their own with Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw and some guys, but they'll get creative. They'll figure things out on defense. Like I said, I teased the 49ers with the Las Vegas Raiders. I think it is my favorite bet of the week by a decent margin.
So it is the 49ers who are practicing in Colorado Springs this week. And that's what the Patriots did in 2017 when they were playing the Raiders in Mexico City. And Mexico City, I think, is 7,000 feet above sea level. Colorado Springs at the United States Air Force Academy is 6,000 feet above sky level. So above sea level. So if there's anywhere in the world that you want to practice in as you're getting prepared for Mexico City, it is in Colorado Springs. It is at the Air Force Academy. And I was out there in Colorado Springs for that whole week when the Patriots were preparing for Mexico City. And the altitude is real. Like I was out there hiking. I was out there, I was there for the whole week. And it does impact you. And I know that there's been studies that say that it takes you longer than a week to get adjusted to altitude. I totally believe that. I am pro science. I totally believe that. But I think that it still is valuable to practice above sea level like the 49ers are doing in Colorado Springs because it gives you your limitations for what you can do once you get to Mexico City. So you might not actually be acclimated to the altitude level, but at least okay, I might not be able to play 100% of snaps in this game, or you at least, know what the limitations for you are. And in that game, where it was the Patriots against the Raiders in Colorado Springs, in Mexico City, Patriots destroyed the Raiders in that game. Raiders practice in Las Vegas or Oakland, wherever it was at that point, all week. Patriots practice in Colorado Springs. They are much more used to the altitude. They're much better acclimated to it. They knew their limitations, and they absolutely destroyed the Raiders. So that's just another thing going in the 49ers' favor in this game is that I think that they are going to be better prepared to be playing in Mexico City this week. And the fact that, obviously, it's a neutral playing field certainly helps them as well. And I would expect 49ers to have a lot more fans in Mexico City than the Arizona Cardinals.
I would certainly agree. Some more anecdotal evidence. My dad lives out in Colorado, and he may not be fully acclimated. I never played an NFL game out there when I visited, but you adjust. I think it's also the dry air versus kind of moist, thicker air too. Not just the thin versus, all that goes into it. Now we're getting deep into the weeds here, but I think it's a very smart thing for the 49ers to do because it does make a difference. You can, like you said, what you can actually put up with when you maybe want to go to the sideline and get a quick blow. All that stuff matters a ton. So that was sharp of the 49ers. And I also would assume they have a couple more fans in the stands than Arizona does.
It also, I think it was a situation where David Andrews didn't play against the Raiders in that game. Like sometimes there's players who just cannot deal with the altitude at all. So that at least tells you okay, this guy can't play in this game, or this guy can play 10 snaps, whatever it is. All right, let's get into best bets really quick because we have ran very far over what we usually do on these shows. So what's your best bet for the week?
Yep. So I mentioned it. I'll mention it one more time, but it is a teaser with these San Francisco 49ers and the Las Vegas Raiders. So you tease the Niners down to -2, just a 6-point teaser, and the Raiders up to 8.5. It's called a long teaser because you're going through the key numbers of 7 and 3 using only 6 points on the move. That is my favorite bet of the entire week.
Someone in the comment section, Green Truth, is going to hate this, but I think I'm going to say the Patriots favored by 3 points is my best bet of the week. I don't think this is the time when the Jets are going to beat the Patriots for the first time since 2015. I think the Patriots, despite the injuries to Christian Barmore and Jake Bailey, will prevail in this game and beat the Jets by more than 3 points. All right. Well, that will do it for us for the week on PFF Wire. We will be back with you guys again on Monday, where I will extol the virtues of practicing in altitude for like 30 minutes on that show. We'll just go like even deeper into it, go into the science, do all those things. I'm joking possibly, but before then, subscribe to PFF Plus. That's $79.99 a year. Make sure to subscribe to PFF Wire on Apple and Spotify. Make sure to download the PFF app, which is improving every single day. Follow Brad on Twitter at PFF_Brad. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kyed. And we will be back with you guys again, like I said, on Monday around this same time.